So this is the outcome, which I'm going to spend some time and hopefully try and explain this in 15 minutes. You can access this Prezi and another Word document that tells you information about the outcome, but if you want to watch this hopefully very short film, this will also provide you with some information. So basically, what's the outcome? It's the presentation of your key findings in relation to the 3 or 4 key areas that you chose at the beginning of the folio. Now they may have changed a little bit since you began, which is fine, but your outcome will discuss your finalised research question and key areas. It's a really good idea that you have completed your summary of key findings, or at least the section that's related to the key area before you attempt that section of your outcome. And for most people, that's probably going to be the way we work through the outcome, because we are a little bit behind at this point. Okay, a reminder about key findings. The key findings are simply the facts that you've learned in relation to your subheadings or key areas that you outlined in your planning sheet. There's no annotations with your key findings, it's just straight out facts. Okay, so you don't need to annotate your key findings. What's the purpose of the outcome? It's to demonstrate that you can synthesize information, so research information, to present an answer to a research question. So all that research in the folio, it's the outcome is a way so you can put it together in a simplified form, so that a person could actually see all that research you've done and you've provided an answer to that question. You can. It's also asked. We also ask you to support your key findings through evidence or examples from your research. That's basically just referencing for most people. Okay. How's it structured and what's in it? You have an introduction that provides context. All right. So why are you researching this particular question? Now, for some people, that'll be individual. Might be something you're really interested in, you wanted to do, or it might be a bigger picture thing. It might be something that's happening in society that's caught your attention and you wanted to explore. You have a body divided into sections. You have a conclusion that presents the answer to your question, and that is really important. And in fact, I normally would suggest to students that in their introduction that they actually provide the answer, because you need to be able to be assessed for that. And if you wait to your conclusion, especially if you go to your word count, it could be missed. On the side, I've explained the context and what that might mean. Okay. And you divide it up into your 4 key areas, 3 or 4 key areas. It's really important that you remember that if you're doing research project B or research project A, what the differences are, and there is only really a small difference, and it's actually in the length of the task. So if you're doing research project B, you have 2,000 words to work with. If you're doing research project A, you have 1,500 words. It's really the only difference. The assessment for the standards is exactly the same. Formats, 90%, or actually according to the SACE board, 93% of students produce it as a report. That doesn't mean that that's the best way to do it. Just means that 93% of students take a fairly safe option. But on this slide, you can see there are a number of different ways you can present. And obviously, if you choose any of those, except for the essay or the report, you probably should discuss with me what you need to do that is slightly different from the other types. But you should always work to your strengths for this. So if you're not a good writer, for example, don't write. You don't have to write anything. You can do it as an oral presentation, and you don't even have to present it in front of me. It can be a recorded oral presentation like I'm doing right now. Or if you're a visual person, you might like to do artwork. Some students in the past have done videos, some topics lend themselves really well to that type of format. And then on this slide, you'll see there's a whole range of other formats. Not all of them are applicable to research project, but they're more a list of different ways you can present assignments. Some things I'm not even sure what they are. I'm not really sure what a Voki is, but other things on there you certainly can discuss with me, and we can work out a way to for you to present them. Okay, really important thing to consider with your outcome is an audience. It makes a really big difference with your evaluation, particularly when you discuss your outcome, because it means you can discuss how you targeted an audience, and it also means that in your discussion or in your outcome itself, you can write specifically to a way that's going to fit a group rather than just writing generically. And certainly, as you can see there, being able to write to an audience can really help you get an A, okay, in both the outcome and the folio. Okay, how you assessed. There's only 3 performance standards for research project, for the research project outcome. So what we call S1, S2, and S3. S1 is the synthesis of knowledge, skills, and ideas to produce a resolution to the research question. So basically, that's how you put everything together. And S2, that should be, not S1, substantiation of key findings. For 99% of people's outcomes, that will just mean referencing. And S3 is expression of ideas, and that means how well you actually communicate what you're saying. And that's things like spelling, punctuation, grammar if you're writing. That also applies in oral presentations as well. But it's not just those things. If you make one spelling mistake, you're not going to be penalised. It's more that how easily your ideas are communicated to us. That's why some people do photo journals when they make things, and they may not have lots of writing. They use lots of pictures, and they can still get an A. Okay, S1, production of the research outcome. Creation of research outcome that brings together synthesizers. So we're looking for you to weave together the information, particularly the primary research and the secondary research. And what we're really looking for is connections. So a lot of students, the B-level students who have lots of information and generally good writers, just present information, but they don't actually connect it together. So an A student will actually connect their ideas so that we can see that they're not just listing ideas. And so this brings me to what's the difference between an A and a B? Okay, that's probably the main thing. The main thing is that the A student doesn't just present ideas to us, they actually show some thought about it. And so that's where there's some insight. The insight is where you think about the information that you're presenting. So we're looking for a little bit of your voice in the outcome. The B student, as I said before, will have lots and lots of information, and it'll all be factually correct, and it'll all make sense, and it'll all be referenced, but there won't be really much of their own analysis or discussion of the information or thought about it. The C standard is similar to the B, it's just not as much information normally presented as the B student. And a really good thing if you're trying to get an A+ is to be critical of the information that you're presenting. So where you contrast your ideas, where you might say, where you might be able to observe that there is disagreeing information about a fact, and you present both and then come to a conclusion based on the further research that you've done. Substantiation of key findings. So in research project, it means a little bit of a different thing to referencing. It really just means proving that your information is gathered from another source. It's not you just making it up. But for 99% of research project outcomes, it will be referencing, okay? But if you are if you are making something, for example, you may have other ways to actually substantiate what your findings were. As you can see down the bottom there, there's some examples of substantiation. Just remember with your resources, and I know we've been over this, so I won't labour it too much because most people have been really good at understanding there's all these different types of sources. So this is just to remind you, there's the list. You have that in the OneNote. That's primary sources. There's a few more. Okay, and I'm not going to read through those. As I said, you can access that in the OneNote, and then obviously secondary sources, which people also have understood pretty well. Okay, the last performance standard is S3, it's expression of ideas, which I went through really briefly before. And really it is just about how well you are able to communicate the ideas that you trying to present. How well do you communicate your answer to your question and the evidence that you're using to support it. And you can see there spelling, punctuation, grammar, layout and form, inclusion of visual material are all things that will help your communication or the expression of your ideas. I said before, think about what you're good at, think about what you're not good at, and make a decision about how you're going to present your outcomes so that you can get a high mark for expression of ideas. Okay, referencing. I'm not going to spend lots of time on referencing. You can look at the Prezi for further information a bit later on if you really want to, but there is a preferred method of referencing in the SACE board, which is the Harvard or author date system. Now you can do footnoting, but a lot of people don't understand that to do footnoting correctly, it's actually a lot harder than it seems, and it requires you to do an extra step from Harvard referencing. And for referencing, you should know by now that every idea that's not your own needs to be referenced, not just when you're quoting word for word. The more referencing you show, the better your mark for S2. Okay? Now there is a document that tells you how to use in-text referencing in Microsoft Word. If you're unsure how to do that, most people in the class I know how to do that, but I do know there's a couple of people who've been having trouble with it. So you can use something like Harvard Generator as well, which is fine. But you should discuss with me at the end of your outcome if you've done it correctly, because your bibliography should be, or reference list should be alphabetically listed as well. Okay, there's some key points about referencing. As I said, I don't want to go through referencing in detail here. I really only wanted to talk about the outcome. That if you want to know more about your referencing, you should look at this or the documents that are listed on this slide. Okay, just a reminder, as I said, most students will choose either an essay or report. Don't feel because I've only given information on these two that that's what you have to do. You can do any of them, anything that fits to your requirements or your strengths. I can certainly help you make sure that you can pass and make sure you get a high mark. Just remember, an introduction is going to be different in terms of you only really work with 3 key ideas, and you have an introduction and conclusion, and there has to be a link. There needs to be a follow through or link between each paragraph. A report has an introduction. You're meant to discuss methodology, but we will discuss whether you should put that in or not, depending on how many words you have in your outcome. But the big advantage with reports is you don't have to link paragraphs, and certainly you don't have to link key areas. They can work separately. Okay, as I said, I don't want to go over referencing. We've already mentioned that. Here's some examples. Okay, so the summary of the outcome, all of your research is combined to answer the question. Okay, so everything that you've done in your, listed in your key findings, the more research you have, the better the outcome. There's just remember, there's more than web pages and surveys, but everyone in the class has really been pretty good about trying to go beyond those 2 things. All words and information that are not your own must be referenced. Right, refer to the information from the SACE board or the documents on the OneNote. And you must try to do that every time, not sometimes. The more you do it, the higher your mark. It's easy as that. And all information must be clear and easy to understand. If it doesn't make sense, how can we know if you've answered the question? That's it.